We are just moments away from having Jimmer Fredette join us here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Heard exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. He is Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Jimmer Fredette, former BYU guard, played there from 2007 to 2011. The 2011 National Player of the Year, 2011 NCAA scoring champion, scored 29 points per game, led the country that year, scored over 3,000 career points at BYU, and in 2011, the year after the K-State BYU game in the second round, he guided BYU to the Sweet 16. That was their last Sweet 16 prior to last season. He was drafted 10th overall in 2011 by Milwaukee, traded to the Kings, played in the NBA for a few years, and then he went overseas and averaged some insane numbers over in China, multiple scoring titles. I mean, this dude was putting up like 37, 38 points per game overseas and had a long, lengthy, very successful overseas career.
Yeah, I mean, he put up some ridiculous numbers, which is how Jimmer Mania existed. I mean, he had a 47-point game against Utah where he shot 6 of 9 from 3 in a win for BYU over Utah. He dropped 43 versus number 4 San Diego State in the Marriott Center. And then in the tournament, nobody who could forget 35 points he dropped in Gonzaga to help BYU get to the Sweet 16. That was back in 2011, his senior season. And, I think he had a game overseas in Asia where he scored 75 points.
Played for the Shanghai Sharks.
75 points in a game. And I want to say that he represented USA in the Olympics in that 3v3 deal that they had.
So when he was over in China, over here it was Jimmer Mania, but when he was in China, they gave him the fan nickname Jimmo Dashin, which translates to the Lonely Master. How cool is that?
Why was he lonely?
I think it was just kind of a overarching, I don't want to say stereotype, but a lot of American basketball players that are playing overseas in China. Right. Jimmer's on with us now. Jimmer Fredette joins us here on Big 12 Today.
Jimmer, were you lonely in China?
And there are some lonely times over in China, but it was, you guys talking about Jimo Dashen?
Yes.
The Lonely Master?
Yes. You said it. You said it way better than I did.
Well, I can give you the background of that story real quick because I thought it was interesting at first, right? So I was on the bus after a game, and my 7'3" center came to me. Matt, his name is Max, right? He played at the University of California. He was one of the only guys that spoke like perfect English on the team. So he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, Jimmer, do you know what they're saying about you?" And I was like, "No, Max, I don't speak Mandarin. What are they saying?" And he was like, "Well, they're calling you Jimo." And I was like, "Okay, great. Like, I understand that's what they say, but in China, that they always call me Jimo because they can't really pronounce the ER, right? So they can't say Jimmer. So because of that, they say Jimo. And I guess in Mandarin, Jimo means lonely, right? And I was like, they're calling you Jimo Dashen, which means like the Lonely Master. And I was like, that's a terrible name. Like, why are they calling me that? That doesn't sound good. He's like, no. It's a good context. He's like, when they say that, it means like you're lonely, but at the top of the mountain and no one can reach your level.
Yep.
He's like, you're like the best. And I was like, all right, that's much better. We can go with that. That sounds like a great plan idea. And they started calling me Jimo Dashen ever since. And it's stuck. That's for sure.
Yeah, it feels like a cultural disconnect there. Where like in America, I don't know if that would be a good thing, but I can understand in Chinese culture how that might be a good thing.
Correct. Exactly. But I was lonely over there too, like actually lonely because my family wasn't there. Right. So, I mean, it was a double meaning for me. My wife and kids at the time were mostly home. And, so it was, there was double meaning there.
Well, from Jimmer Mania to your jersey in the rafters and your legacy at BYU, that incredible 2011 Sweet 16 season and Player of the Year and scoring champ, the jersey retirement. And Jimmer's joining us because his jersey just went up in the rafters at the Marriott Center. When you saw that jersey go up, was it pride? Was it relief? Was it nostalgia? What were the emotions that came with that moment?
Yeah, it was, definitely a lot of pride and no, I wouldn't necessarily say relief. I'd just say excitement and emotional. It's one of those things. There's not many jerseys retired at BYU. I was the fifth from the men's side, and that dates all the way back to the 50s. So it's a very special thing. There's a long kind of list that you kind of have to go through to get approved to even be considered to have your jersey retired at BYU. So it's definitely a true honor, and they treated us super special that weekend. Like they really did. They went all out. The detail was amazing. It was incredible to just see all of my former teammates and coaching staff and people that were kind of there when I was there, kind of helped me through that process, which was an amazing feeling. So, I mean, to have my family there with me, with my kids, and them to kind of understand it and know that they'll remember that moment was really, really special. So just the emotional and, very uplifting weekend, and very tiring as well. We did a lot. So it was really, really a fun time.
Do you live in Utah now?
I don't. I actually live in Colorado. My wife is from Littleton, Colorado, just south of Denver. We've been here for 14 years, so this is home for us and close to her parents, and it's been awesome.
I'd imagine if you lived in Utah, like everybody still remembers Jimmer and Jimmer Mania. What about Colorado? Is there are people still stopping you and oh my God, it's Jimmer and Jimmer Mania?
It's not nearly as bad as Utah, right? Like Utah is the climax for that. It's the spot, and part of the reason why we love living out here in Colorado. And yeah, it's definitely more low key. I mean, obviously I'll get stopped, in Colorado, even just, nationwide, sometimes worldwide,
right.
You'll get stopped just randomly, by people, of course, that love BYU or college basketball fans or NBA basketball fans, whatever that is. So I'll get noticed, but I can live a much more normal life out here than in Utah for sure.
I'm just curious. So, Jimmer Mania, obviously 2011, the dude averaged 29 points a game, shot 40% from three. But I mean, in your junior season, you averaged less points, but you shot 44% from three on 5 attempts per game. Just insane. What do you remember most? What stands out to you? Because the reason I asked that first question is I wonder what people remember. When you're in Utah, what do people say? Oh, I remember this. And then contrast that with what you remember.
Yeah. I mean, they remember long range shots, right? That's what they think. That's what they think of when they hear Jimmer. They correlate Jimmer to this day to BYU, no matter where I am. And then they correlate that to, shooting from super deep, and a lot of people will be like, man, when I was younger, I used to say Jimmer when I shot a shot, and, all these different types of things, and which is awesome. And obviously I remember all those moments too. And, I definitely had some deep range, and that was something that made me unique and different, especially at the time. And a lot of people obviously remember a couple different things with the San Diego State game that we played at our place. That was a massive game that people watched. And then our Sweet 16 run in the tournament, right? The tournament is always the most heavily watched NCAA basketball event. So because we played well there and made a run in there and kind of did our thing for a few different games, people remember that, of course. And I obviously remember those very, very fondly.
Jimmer Fredette joining us here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Jimmer Mania, it was a full-blown cultural phenomenon back in 2010 and 2011. President Obama was mentioning you when he was filling out his bracket. Did you have a moment, when did you first realize things had just gotten truly crazy out there in Jimmer Mania and the support of you in your play?
Yeah, no, I remember specifically it happened right after that San Diego State game that I talked about at our place. Once it was 2 top 10 teams that played, people obviously knew about us. We had a great beginning of the season. Things were going really well. Jimmer Mania was kind of taking off, but once that San Diego State game happened and we ended up winning, I had a really great game. That was when all of the professional athletes and kind of music industry people and all of these famous people started tweeting about me. after that game, and because of that, it exploded. And it was pretty wild to say. And I remember after that game, that was the first time I had been a part of a court rushing before. So all of our students rushed the court, and I was like, this is kind of cool. And then it immediately turned to, you know what, I need to get out of here. Like, people are trying to grab me and pull me and hold me. And I was like, so they brought the security around, and I remember looking over the scores table. They brought me behind the score table and kind of had me, enclosed over there. And there was just a sea of people out there looking at me and, chanting my name and chanting BYU. And it just was like surreal. And then I remember after that game, normally you just walk out the Marriott Center front doors. Like, I'd always walk out and I'd, get in my car and leave, just because, people, it was a couple hours after the game, whatever it was, people had kind of left, and, you can kind of get out of there on your own. I remember after that game, they were like, you can't leave out the normal way that you normally go. There's thousands of people out there waiting for you, and we don't have security to, like, get you through. And they're like, so my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, Whitney, she drove the car underneath the Marriott Center, the loading dock, to pick me up, so that I had to go out that way. And then ever since then, I had to do that. Every road game we went to, there'd be thousands of people waiting for us before or after the game. We'd get home at 2 a.m. At the Provo airport. There'd be people that were there waiting. We had security. It just kind of actually just exploded, like, overnight. And then all of a sudden I was wanted to be on every single TV and radio show you could possibly think of. They had a Jimmer tracker on ESPN and, like, all these crazy stuff after that game. And it was wild, to be honest with you. It was a really cool experience. But it was something that I wasn't necessarily, prepared or ready for.
My co-host, his name is James, and I believe your legal name is James as well, right?
Yep, it is. Yep.
Okay, so
let's go.
He's just James. Nothing cool about that.
They used to call me BYU at the rec center. Pick up basketball.
There you go.
I'm not kidding.
I love that.
So where did, and I can't call James Jim. He's a big non-Jim guy. So
right,
how did Jimmer come?
Yeah, it was my mom. Like, I literally, was born, and she named me James Taft Fredette. But she's like, you're not being called James, you're being called Jimmer. And it was just because, she liked the name James, but she had a lot of Jims and Jameses in the family. So it was kind of like a family name, but she wanted a unique spin on it. And for some reason, she just thought of it. And, she's obviously like a master, at branding. She was incredible. Yeah. That was an amazing job by her. Take all the credit. And, obviously it became kind of like the one name recognition, just because it's kind of a unique, different name, even though it's not like crazy, like, to think about it, but right. But it is still different. So because of that, yeah, that's where it came from. And she would go in, I remember I was in, kindergarten, and I'd be in school, and she'd be like, yes, his legal name is James, but do not call him that. You need to call him Jimmer. She'd tell all my teachers that, principal and everything. So I've always been called Jimmer.
Well, Jimmer, I'm announcing a game tomorrow night on ESPN2, and I'll be introducing myself as Jimmer.
No, there's only one.
Moving forward, just to see what happens, right?
That's hilarious. You should do it. You should do it. Just give me a little shout out too. If you do that, I think that would be phenomenal. Yeah, I love that.
You have to mention that Jimmer gave you the okay to do it.
Right. This was previously approved by the real Jimmer.
There you go. I love
it. Man, you put up like some ridiculous numbers overseas, scoring 37, 38 points a game. You had a 75-point game. Take us through, like, we always love to hear the stories of fighting through adversity, and you mentioned some of the loneliness that came with being so far away from your family, but you were just on the floor bawling out every single night. So what can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, it was interesting, right? So I remember it was like my fourth year. After my fourth year in the NBA, going into the fifth year, I was at training camp with the Spurs, and it ended up being a place where it was going to come down to me and one other guy of who was going to make the team. Like, I was trying to still make the team and make the NBA, and they gave me an opportunity. And I got called into Coach Popovich's office, last preseason game, and they were like, "Hey, we're going to have to cut you from the team." And I was like, man, I had never been cut from a basketball team at that point in my life. And it was difficult, right? And I was like, all right, what do I do now? Like, what's the opportunity? What's ahead? And I had all these opportunities all over the world. I knew that an NBA door had closed at that point. but China was something that spoke to me for some reason. Yao Ming was the owner at the time. He wanted me to come over and play. Shanghai is an amazing city. They had a coach that was American. His name's Brian Gorgon, who was the Australian national team for the Olympics. He's been their head coach for the last several cycles and just an amazing guy. And I just felt it was the right place to go. So I did, and it was the right decision. And I told myself, I was like, listen, I could sulk and be done and, forget about not, and just be like, no one would fault you for kind of just giving up if you just decide you want to do that. But I was like, that's not who I am. When another door opens up, it's time to go take advantage of that opportunity and do it to the best of my ability. And I wanted to go be the best player I could be over there. And, the first season, won MVP of the league and leading scorer. We had a great season, one of the best seasons Shanghai had up to that point. It became kind of Jimmermania all over again in China, which was a really cool experience for that next 4 years. And I love the people of Shanghai. They gave me an opportunity. Still love, being able to follow them and what they're doing. And I still get a lot of support from the people over there. And just an incredible experience, both culturally and on the basketball court, and kind of changed the narrative of, why is he not back in the NBA again? And then actually after my third season in China, I did get an opportunity to come back and play in the NBA in my late 20s, which really does not happen for a guy like myself. And which was a really cool narrative. And it was just it was a great experience for me.
Well, and then to be able to compete at the Olympics in the 3v3, one, what was that like? And two, did I read you basically oversee FIBA 3-on-3 Olympics now? Is that what you do?
Yeah. So what happened? So I obviously played 3x3, got to play, put the USA on, play for the Olympics, go through the opening ceremony. So unfortunately, I got hurt the second game in. I tore my adductor and I couldn't play for the rest of the Olympics, which was heartbreaking because we had a chance to medal. You were the best team in the world going into that tournament, and we had high expectations, and then it gets taken away from you very, very quickly with an injury, which was really unfortunate. And then after that, I was going to retire after that, regardless of what happened, and I ended up retiring. And USA Basketball came to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in being managing director of our 3x3 program for USA Basketball?" So that's what I'm doing now. I'll pick the team for the Olympics in 2028. I pick all the World Cup teams. I'm in the midst of, recruiting guys, getting guys to come play for us, and, hopefully be able to help bring a medal home in 3x3 basketball in a different capacity. But to be involved in USA Basketball at any level, and be a managing director, I mean, that's for like Grant Hill and Sue Bird and, these famous, amazing Hall of Fame players. And then there's me. They threw me in there for some reason, but it's a great opportunity.
Jimmer Fredette here on Big 12 today. Before we let you go, Ari and I both have youngsters playing basketball. We're talking 9, 10 years old. So break down what makes the perfect jump shot that we can share with these guys.
Good call.
Yeah, I love it. So balance is huge. You got to make sure you're on balance. Footwork and balance, making sure you're squared to the basket, even if you're kind of, turning into your shot. That's a huge deal. Elbows got to be in. It's got to be under that ball. Right. I don't want it out. It makes it so that ball goes straight every time. So you got to make sure that elbow's in and under the ball. And then a lot of things, obviously the follow through is really important, but when you follow through, one of the things that I tell people is that your shoulder actually has to be pointing towards the basket when you're done. Because if your shoulder is pointing towards the basket when you're done, that means that ball is for sure going straight. And that is really, really important on the follow through. If you watch all the best 3-point shooters in the world, you see Steph Curry. A lot of times they end up a little bit sideways because their shoulder is right directly towards the rim when they're shooting it. And it makes it so that ball has no variance left or right. And then it's just about getting consistency, too short or too long, right? That's what you want. You don't want left or right. If it's too short or too long, you can get that muscle memory with your legs. So those are the most important things.
Yep, the best miss is a straight line miss. Jimmer Fredette, former BYU NBA guard, a long, lengthy, successful career as a hooper, joining us here on Big 12 today. Jimmer, this was awesome, man. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me on. This was fun. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
That was awesome.
Jimmer Fredette, his jersey in the rafters at the Marriott Center in Provo, Utah. The 2011 National Player of the Year guided BYU to a Sweet 16.
And there's a lot of factors that delivered BYU to the Big 12, but I don't think we can downplay Jimmer mania and his junior and senior seasons at BYU and what that meant towards helping the profile of BYU, especially for basketball, and helping to deliver them to the Big 12. Again, football plays a huge role in that, certainly, and there's lots of factors, but I don't think we can divorce Jimmer from that and his role in helping BYU get to the Big 12.
Totally. And, man, I could listen to that guy talk all day. When he's telling stories about after the San Diego State game, having to have his girlfriend, now wife, pull the car from back underneath in the loading dock so he can get out of there without being mobbed.
I mean, he was the Beatles. Jimmermania was legit. It was unbelievable. And I think it was just this combination of this dude could hit a shot from anywhere, and he just looked like anybody, right? Like it could be any of us, even though he wasn't.
He had a swagger about him too.
Yeah.
People love the swagger. All right, we'll wrap up the show with the final whistle. Coming up next, he's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio and Big 12 Studios.